Barco possession number is quite balanced when you put it in the right context. He plays for a Strasbourg side who aren't possession obsessed, but aren't afraid to keep the ball and control it either. So 50 passes per 90 is a fair and honest number for his role. He's got this really good ability to read spaces and tell how much time he's got to receive and act on the ball. Barco scans intelligently as he actively seeks to get involved in possession. He performs the obvious scan before calling for the ball and a critical scan while the pass is in motion towards him, so he can confirm how much time he's got, what the space is, where his teammates are open, and where the pressure could be coming from. And by the time the ball reaches his feet, the decision is already made. The attack that goes through Barco are consistently the most dangerous ones for Strasbourg. You see the result of that in how he reacts to the ball. His first touch is occasionally used to set up where his pass is going to go to, and Barco has 3 specific responses to pressure that he uses consistently, which is how he breaks the rhythm of the opponent. The first is selling a false direction and going the other way. When he scans and notices the pressure is coming from an angle, he uses a fake pass, a fake carry, a feint, or a false body direction to make his marker commit to blocking that angle, and when they do, he swiftly turns and exploits the space created with a pass. Even when the pressure is up his neck, he waits for his marker to leave a space open or to relax and go flat-footed, and then he slips a pass through the lines. And the third is the wall pass. When Barco senses the pressure coming from behind, he simply offers himself up and uses his body to redirect the ball for a teammate. One touch and the pressure is gone. Now, is he a Modric or Pedri in terms of scanning? Absolutely not. Those players scan obsessively whether they're involved or not. Their heads are constantly turning, updating their mental picture every few seconds. Barco invests in that level of scanning when he is actively seeking to get involved in possession. So when the game moves away from him, he tends to trust that mental picture he already has and floats with it, which occasionally means when his teammates are under pressure and play him an unexpected pass, he now has to figure out in real time how much space he's got and how quickly pressure is arriving, and that has a potential to end up badly. But it doesn't take away from the fact that when he's actively seeking involvement, his scanning is proper and his critical scan is pretty sharp. So I wouldn't really consider it a weakness, but if he could invest in that obsessive level of scanning, it would help him bail his teammates out in weird situations with much more ease. Now, in terms of his overall possession identity, he's not a pure controller, not someone who obsessed with keeping the ball and dictating every tempo bit. Barco reminds me more of a young, unrefined, rough Modric at Spurs, someone who tries to pull the string but whose instinct is always to push the ball forward rather than recycle it. A progressive player that still possesses a controller skill set. He wants influence over the game, but his hunger to advance it never disappears. Now, in terms of his actual passing, Barco is second in this group for creative passes, only behind Pedri, and that is justified even in the eye test. His passing range is actually varied. Long diagonals from his own half that travels 40 meters and land exactly on the winger's foot. Tight through balls splitting two defenders in the close quarters. Lofted passes over the defensive lines that arrives exactly where the runners need them. So Barco is not your one type of passer. He can hurt you from a lot of different positions on the pitch, and he does it accurately in most cases. If there's one area I've got to be completely honest, is Barco's crossing is weak. 26.3% accuracy near the bottom of this group. His hip doesn't rotate quickly enough to generate clean deliveries from wide position. His planted foot isn't strong either to command accurate swing with power, and the trajectory goes wrong way too often, which is why he doesn't force himself into wide crossing positions and he doesn't try to deliver from the flanks. He already knows this isn't a weapon in his game, so he positions himself to find crossers rather than be the crosser himself. He leads the entire group above Enzo Fernandez, Adam and Pedri. He's consistently positioning himself not to be in the final creative action, but to be the player who makes the final creative action possible. His cutbacks and crosses aren't his strength, so rather than forcing himself into those positions, he finds the players who can deliver from there. Barco in possession is obviously a playmaker, but do I see this quality standing out at the very top level where his physical limitation would genuinely be tested? Not at this moment. There's quite a lot to refine. Playing in a league like the Premier League, I doubt how much he'll be able to deliver with lesser time on the ball and when he's being put on the ropes for full 90 minutes with terrifying openers running at him. I do give him the benefit that he's not a newbie to pressured environment. He's been on the big stages of his own for a while now, but I definitely expect the quality of his game to take a big hit when more is physically demanded from him, and that's actually what makes the creative section even more interesting, because that's where we start to see how far his vision actually goes. Statistically, Barco's ball carrying doesn't pull up any trees, and honestly, the eye test doesn't completely contradict that either. He's not a gifted carrier of the ball, and he doesn't have that dazzling quality that makes you hold your breath when he picks up the ball. He's more passion driven. When you watch him in most dribbling situations, he's always a step from falling and always tripping over in those tight spaces, and that tells you he's not the fastest player, nor the most skillful player, but to constantly beat players in those tight areas, he would definitely give it a try. So that leaves him with an option. When he does carry the ball, it has to be in a situation where a pass wouldn't just get the job done. So you won't see him trying to beat 2 or 3 men on the goal. Most times you can just tell he's trying to buy his teammates time, or he's observed that there's enough space to take the risk. The cheeky advantage that Barco has in this skill set is that he ends up winning a lot of fouls in those tight areas. He's shorter and closer to the ball, so he knows how to stay compact in those dribbling situations and win fouls consistently. Barco leads this entire group for fouls won at 2.69 per 90, above Pedri, Enzo, above everyone. And even when he isn't the fastest or the most gifted player, he's quite brave enough to put himself in tight spaces, smart enough to use his body when the carry doesn't come off clean. Barco passing will always be his primary tool in progression and working in tight spaces. Carrying for Barco is like a support mechanism, something he uses intelligently rather than something he leads his game with. Barco's defensive numbers sit above Enzo Fernandez and Nathan, and on the first look, that seems decent. But when you actually watch him defend, the eye test starts painting a more honest picture. The first thing you want to know about any midfielder defensively is how well they read the danger before it arrives. And with Barco is not someone who's consistent at scanning threats and tracking runners and reading where the ball is going before he gets there. When the game is moving away from him and the immediate pressure isn't on him anymore, he can switch off. He sometimes trusts the danger isn't heading his way until it already is, and that's where the problem begins for Barco. But in another scenario where he's played as the last man, when the burden is fully on him to defend his box, to cover for fullbacks, he can actually be decent. I've seen him play neatly on the last line, following the textbook accurately, reading the threat, covering the box, keeping his eyes sharp on spaces and runners. The work rate is genuinely there, but the moment he senses there's a teammate behind him in defense, the urgency starts to fade. Runners slips through his watch in midfield, he just kind of tunes down his alertness, and that's a mental habit, and one that's going to get exposed at the highest level. Now, when it gets to the actual defensive actions themselves, his defensive 1v1 percentage sits at 38%, and you've got Pedri at 87%. That gap It's not a small one. Barco lacks the defensive composure and mechanics that would help him come out clean in 1v1s. He doesn't decelerate quickly enough, and that's the thing that gets you set up and prepared to properly face the ball carrier. Barco rides flat face instead of side on, meaning he's slower, which means he can't run backward quickly, he can't be nutmegged, he can't direct them outside the goal line, and he can't force them onto their weaker foot either. So he's just like a cone in 1v1s. He doesn't even have the long limbs to nick the ball cleanly. So any half attacker reads it and they're on your way through. But the stats say he's impressive with his defensive action, and that's down to the reactive duels he wins, mostly coming from arriving from the blind side or the last ditch slide tackles when there's nothing else left. Not from standing his ground and winning it properly. There's no real intelligence in how he approaches his 1v1 situations yet, as it is mostly reactive. Now, do I think his defending is beyond saving? No, he has this engine and he has the bravery, and when the game fully demands it from him, I've seen cases where he's stuck to the textbook when it comes to defending the box and spaces. I've seen pure brilliance is there, but in 1v1s, I don't see any real growth happening there anytime soon. So I'll never put him back at fullback because he's going to be a weak point to any team playing in that position. But overall, I'm going to give it to him because he's more of a workhorse than a smartly drilled defender. And when that work rate is matched against smarter and more hardworking players you most likely find on the UCL night and in the Premier League, it could be exposed occasionally. Barco's goal return is one of the lowest in this group, and honestly, the eye test doesn't just support that, it explains exactly why. Because before we even talk about his shooting mechanics, Barco is always absent from goal scoring positions when the attack is building. Barco is always looking for where to play the pass, not where to position himself to receive a pass inside the box. He doesn't make those runs, he doesn't occupy those goal scoring angles, and I think deep down he already knows why. Because on the rare occasions he does get into the shooting position, his mechanics let him down badly. He doesn't lean forward enough to shoot, he's leaning backwards, his arms are everywhere, no balance, and because he's falling backwards at that point of contact, contact, he's catching the ball from underneath. His legs are already swinging upwards before the follow through even begins. So most of his shot goes over the bar, over the bar into the stands. There's a confidence issue sitting underneath all of this too. He knows his shooting isn't good enough, so he's quietly removing himself from this situation entirely. So he'd rather find a teammate in that position than to put himself there. And at this point of Barco's career, that isn't changing anytime soon. Barco leads this group in expected assists, and the quality of chances he's creating is something elite for his age. But looking at his teammates' ability to convert chances is why his assist numbers sit below his expected assists. Now in terms of his creative passes, he sits second in this group. Only one player is ahead of him, and that player is Pedri. Because the foundation of that creativity is his vision. Barco sees things quickly and he sees them far. A run being made 30 or 40 meters away, he picks it up. Tight space between the centre back and the full back, Barco can exploit them with a true ball, either a lofted one or on the ground, and the speed at which he processes that picture and make the decision is genuinely impressive for someone his age. Now, is it a type who manufactures chances from nothing, who forces an opening through sheer individual quality? Is Barco an Ozil or a Prime Modric kind of midfielder? Absolutely not. Barco is more of a poor man's De Bruyne or Trent Alexander-Arnold, who is a high volume problem solver. He sees the runs and he plays it. Barco doesn't try to create situations himself, he just needs to read it early enough to exploit it before the defenses adjust. Barco's creativity lives in his ability to see opportunities and exploit them, not the creative gurus who manufactures opportunities for themselves. This map shows us where Barco is mostly effective, particularly in the deep areas, particularly in the deep and central areas, and remembering is incredibly good with long passes and through balls. So Barco is able to create chances from those areas pretty well, but also from the attacking half spaces. But when it comes to the flanks and the side edge of the goal line, his cutbacks and crosses are too weak, so don't be expecting much creativity from those areas. Overall, for the 21-year-old midfielder to be leading this group in expected assists and reading runs at that distance accurately is the real quality. And as Barco matures, as the game slows down further for him, his creativity is only going to grow. So what exactly are you getting when you sign Valentín Barco? You're getting a playmaker. That is the honest answer. His ability to see passes, break presses, and pull the string from midfield, those are his strongest suit. That is one thing you're paying for when you bring him in. But the question you have to ask yourself is that one strength enough to cover for everything? And the honest answer for me is no, not on its own. Barco gave you good games when the conditions are in his favor, when the team is balanced, when the opponent is manageable, when the system gives him freedom, he can pull the strings and make things happen. But when the game demands more from him physically and mentally, when your opponents are elite and demanding, when his team needs someone to dig in and fight for results, those loopholes in his game start showing up very quickly. So where does Barco fit? The only thing that makes much sense to me right now is Arsenal. The Gunners is a team that already has a defensive balance, a team with runners who can make that runs that Barco can already see, a team with a system that gives a midfield playmaker the freedom to pull those type of Alexander-Arnold type of passes from deep. They're going to surround him with players who are more intelligent defensively, who cover the grounds he won't cover, and suddenly his playmaking has a platform to actually mean something. Now for Chelsea, I really don't see it. It's more like a political purchase than an actual tactical one. They don't need more creativity. They need more defensive structure and someone who could help them control games more comfortably with lesser glitches. Barco doesn't fix that problem. I dare say he adds to it. Do I see him becoming a world-class player? Honestly, I don't see it. There are too many loopholes in his game for me to believe that he's going to grow into that player who consistently decides game at the highest level. And currently, I see him as a 75 player in my framework. He's a player who can impact games under the right condition, and 78 at a maximum potential. He's still the same player, just a more refined version, a useful midfielder, but only truly dangerous when everything around him is already working.